The PS5 is home to plenty of solid action-adventure experiences, and this feature is a celebration of the best that the platform has to offer, specifically when talking about action-adventure games. To that end, here are 30 of the best games that you can check out. We have a lot to cover, so let's get right into it. ARAGAMI 2. The original ARAGAMI was a surprisingly solid stealth game in a market mostly devoid of such releases, and 2021's ARAGAMI 2 excellently builds on those foundations to create a sequel that's both larger and better in more aspects than one. ARAGAMI 2 allows you to take enemies head-on with a brand new combat system. Mission objectives are more varied than before, and you can also tackle the many missions with friends thanks to support for co-op, making it a dream come true for stealth game fans. Control Ultimate Edition. Remedy Entertainment's latest Control is emblematic of the developer's greatest strengths: a bombastic third-person gameplay loop, a deeply intriguing story, and excellent art direction. The story of Jesse Faden becoming the FBC director and finding out what happened to Dylan is one that's worth experiencing through to the end, and it's punctuated by open-ended firefights where you can use your arsenal of varied tools to take down enemies in absolute style. The Ultimate Edition packs the base game along with the 2 post-release expansions in a handy package, which makes it the definitive way to play this release. Deathloop. Arcane Studios of Dishonored 2 fame has done a wonderful job with Deathloop, a time-looping adventure that takes the learnings from its past projects and beautifully morphs them into the framework of an action shooter. The objective of the game is to break a time loop by killing a total of 8 targets before the day ends, but achieving that feat requires tons of planning and practice. You have a ton of flexibility when it comes to choosing your own playstyle, as one would expect from a developer of this pedigree. The linear nature of breaking the time loop does hurt the game in some aspects, but it's still a solid game that can be appreciated on its own terms. Ghost of Tsushima Director's Cut. Ghost of Tsushima is a deeply moving tale about our protagonist Jin Sakai fighting an uphill battle to drive out the invading Mongol forces from the island of Tsushima, and that tale is punctuated with plenty of high-octane fights and climactic duels. It's all set against one of the most beautiful open worlds of recent memory, one that's also filled to the brim with interesting side activities that would keep you busy for hours on end. The director's cut provides substantial improvements to the visuals and performance, and you also get the Iki Island expansion included in one package. Evil West. Flying Wild Hog of Shadow Warrior fame delivered an interesting mix of a Wild West setting and fantastical beasts with Evil West. It's an extremely creative game, and everything from the weapon designs to the whimsical characters and varied locales have an element of personality to them. It definitely has some flaws, including but not limited to repetitive level design, but Evil West is an underrated gem that deserves to be appreciated by more people. Ghostwire Tokyo. Ghostwire Tokyo might not have lived up to its fullest potential, but it's still a game that has plenty of merits to its name. The eerily deserted streets of Tokyo offer a fresh contrast to the bustling open worlds of contemporary open worlds, and the combat system of stringing together different spells to take down all sorts of enemies is pretty fun and engaging as well. It definitely has a few rough edges here and there, but if you give this game a fair chance, you might be genuinely surprised by it. Ragnarok. Ragnarok is the conclusion to the Norse saga that started in 2018, and it's a blockbuster of an ending to say the very least. Ragnarok expertly builds upon the foundations of the original with new weapons and abilities, making for a combat system that's surprisingly deep for a single-player game. The story continues to twist at every turn, which comes together with an improved combat to make a consistently thrilling experience. There's a lot to love here, and simply put, Ragnarok is easily one of the best AAA titles of recent memory. Grand Theft Auto 5. Despite being almost a decade old at this point, Grand Theft Auto 5 stands tall as one of the best open worlds on the market. Rockstar's rendition of Los Santos is a literal playground of possibilities, and the developer has filled that virtual space with all sorts of interesting activities and secrets that make existing in this world a blissful experience. Of course, you also have the main story, which takes you through increasingly chaotic heists and firefights, which is a ton of fun to get through. In addition to all of this, there's also GTA Online, the live service game that just keeps on giving. The visuals might be a bit dated in comparison to more modern releases, but the gameplay remains evergreen. Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy. Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy was one of the biggest surprise hits of recent memory, especially after Square Enix's flopped hard with Marvel's Avengers. Guardians of the Galaxy tells a simple yet effective story of a band of misfits working together, and the choices that you make help shape your journey in interesting ways. The gameplay loop revolves around commanding your group while chipping away at an enemy's health bar with your pistols, and it's a fresh combat system that works well enough for the entirety of the story. There's nothing particularly special in Guardians of the Galaxy, but it's a surprisingly solid adventure that deserves to be experienced by more players. It Takes Two. Hazelight Studios has cemented itself as one of the top names in the industry when it comes to crafting compelling co-op experiences. And its latest, It Takes Two, is arguably its best work to date. It's an adventure platformer that challenges you to synchronize your strategies and movements with your co-op partner to clear increasingly tough stages, and the game constantly switches between different types of obstacles to keep things interesting, and it's all topped with a simple yet satisfying story that tackles the same themes of sticking together against all odds. Judgment. While Lost Judgment is RGG's latest entry in this Yakuza spin-off series, we prefer the original Judgment, simply because it's a much better game in our humble opinion. The story in Judgment is much more engaging, and the bevy of narrative twists feel a lot more natural and personal than the sequel. The gameplay also emphasizes working as a detective, and you'll be spending a lot of time collecting clues and investigating crime scenes as opposed to punching dudes in the face, though there are plenty of opportunities to do that as well. Kena Bridge of Spirits. Ember Labs' Kena Bridge of Spirits is a visually evocative journey that explores the premise of Kena helping spirits to cross the bridge between the living and the dead, and it tackles heavy themes like regret and guilt in a surprisingly efficient way. The gameplay is pretty simple, with Kena using her tools and weapons to bring down enemies, but it remains an enjoyable affair thanks to thrilling boss fights and awe-inspiring art direction. The Last of Us Part 1. Naughty Dog delivered one of the most emotionally charged narratives of the last decade with 2013's The Last of Us, and it's a story that still remains one of the best in the medium. The Last of Us Part 1 is a full-fledged remake that presents the same story with increased visual fidelity and markedly more smoothed-over gameplay, which makes it the definitive way to experience this adventure. While it is certainly a shame that the Factions multiplayer mode doesn't make a return, The Last of Us Part 1 is still one of the best games that you can play on the PS5. Like a Dragon Ishin. Like a Dragon Ishin was an underrated gem that was sadly locked on the PS3, but the recently released remake has given countless players a chance to experience this classic in a brand new light. The bevy of visual and gameplay changes help a ton in modernizing this release, and the feudal Japan setting is a fresh change of pace from the bustling streets you get to explore in the mainline Yakuza games. Lost in Random. Zoink Games' latest Lost in Random is one of the most creative games in recent memory, and a lot of that praise can be attributed to its distinct yet familiar setting of random. The characters have a ton of personality and charm to them, and the art style helps in elevating those strengths with its expressive designs. The combat system of collecting random cards and making the most out of that draw is a lot of fun and remains so for the entirety of the adventure. There are a few rough edges here and there, but the bevy of merits help in undermining those frustrations by a significant margin. No Man's Sky. No Man's Sky might not have started life on the best foot, but continuous content updates have helped in turning the game's fates around for good. As it stands now, No Man's Sky is one of the best exploration games on the market, and the procedural planet generation ensures that you constantly encounter new things. And there's just a bunch of stuff to do that'll keep you occupied for dozens upon dozens of hours. The Pathless. The Pathless is a criminally underrated game that never got the love and appreciation it deserves, and it's a shame because it features one of the best movement systems of recent memory. It takes a certain level of skill to be able to efficiently move around at high speeds in the Pathless, but once you nail down those mechanics, just traversing around this beautiful world becomes a therapeutic experience in and of itself. A Plague Tale Requiem. Developer Asobo delivered a compelling action-adventure game with 2019's A Plague Tale Innocence. And A Plague Tale: Requiem builds upon those excellent foundations with a story that's more impactful and a gameplay loop that's more engaging than the original. The countryside setting of 14th century France is rendered with great attention to detail, and Requiem is one of the very few experiences that make good use of current-gen hardware to deliver jaw-dropping visuals, so definitely check this one out. Saints Row the Third Remastered. The recent Saints Row reboot might not have been everything that fans wished for, but thankfully we have Saints Row the Third Remastered to go back to. This remaster of the 2011 classic beautifully modernizes the mayhem-filled open world of Steelport with 4K resolution and smooth 60 frames per second gameplay. Despite its age, Saints Row the Third holds up surprisingly well to this date. Marvel's Spider-Man Remastered. Insomniac's take on the friendly neighborhood webhead is one of the most mechanically sound ones to date, and just swinging around the skyscraper-lined streets of New York City remains an absolutely joyous activity. The combat also focuses on swift dodging and stringing together long attack combos to take down enemies, and it's an equally fun affair as well. The story that binds it all together features plenty of recognizable villains that make getting through it all a dream come true for fans of this superhero. The remastered version of this 2018 classic soups up the visuals and frame rate to take advantage of the PS5's increased power budget, and you also get all of the post-release DLC included in the package, which makes this the definitive way to experience this epic adventure. Marvel's Spider-Man Miles Morales. After delivering an excellent first game with 2018's Marvel's Spider-Man, Insomniac struck gold once again with Spider-Man Miles Morales. Shifting gears from the familiar Peter Parker, Miles Morales shines a light on a new Spider-Man and his journey of overcoming personal hardships to become the hero of the hour. It's a more streamlined experience that's much shorter in length, but it makes the most out of that runtime, with interesting boss fights and new Venom abilities that add new movement and combat options into the mix. Star Wars Jedi Survivor. Star Wars Jedi Survivor takes what worked in Fallen Order and crafts a bigger sequel that is better in almost every conceivable way. Survivor continues the journey of protagonist Cal Kestis as he tries to escape the Empire, and that adventure is brimming with all sorts of secrets to uncover and hideous beasts to take down. The combat is heavily expanded upon with new techniques and abilities available at your disposal, which opens up even more opportunities to take down enemies in absolute style. Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart. Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart makes excellent use of the PS5's SSD and treats players to a rift-jumping adventure that's filled to the brim with jaw-dropping spectacle and set pieces galore. The characters are pretty charming and the weapons are creative as ever, and everything is rendered with utmost attention to detail, which makes it one of the most beautiful games to enjoy on your shiny new console. Subnautica Below Zero. There are few survival games that manage to combine a compelling gameplay loop with an engaging story together in a cohesive fashion, and Subnautica Below Zero is one such game. You return to planet 4546b from the first game, but now you get to explore a brand new Arctic region that's filled with all sorts of alien flora and fauna. Below Zero retains the same gameplay loop of exploring your surroundings, collecting resources, and using them to gain access to new areas, and it remains a lot of fun this time too. Uncharted Legacy of Thieves Collection. Despite not having a new entry in the franchise for more than 5 years, the Uncharted series is home to some of the best action-adventure experiences of recent memory. The Legacy of Thieves collection takes Uncharted 4 and the amazing Lost Legacy and knits them together in a handy package for PS5 owners. In addition to supporting 120 frames per second gameplay, this collection also features 3D audio and improved haptics, which come together to make this version the definitive way to experience the best of what Uncharted has to offer. Watch Dogs Legion. Watch Dogs Legion is certainly guilty of featuring many of the same cookie-cutter designs of other open worlds, but it also has plenty of merits that make it one of the more creative titles from the French gaming giant in quite some time. The play-as-anyone mechanic opens up a lot of gameplay opportunities, and the highly dynamic open world of futuristic London encourages players to get creative with their strategies in order to complete their objectives. There's definitely room for improvement, but what's here is impressive nonetheless. Solar Ash. Much like the Pathless that we discussed before, Solar Ash is another criminally overlooked game that deserves a lot more attention. Developed by Heart Machine of Hyper Light Drifter fame, Solar Ash is a game that's entirely built around making the most out of a smooth movement system, which makes the moment-to-moment gameplay extremely fun. The level designs are also pretty creative, and the constant introduction of new obstacles ensures that you remain on your toes at all times. It's also set in a highly imaginative world that not only features striking art direction but also great world building, which comes together to make Solar Ash a well-rounded experience that's definitely worth a look. Tunic. Developed by Andrew Scholdice, Tunic is an interesting take on old-school adventure games. You take on the role of a cute cuddly fox as it embarks on a grand quest to free itself from a crystal. But that journey is filled with different puzzles that must be solved and challenges that must be overcome. The art style is extremely adorable, and Tunic makes good use of knowledge-based progression mechanics to make for a highly engaging experience from start to finish. Alan Wake Remastered. The original Alan Wake might be more than a decade old at this point, but the recently released Alan Wake Remastered provides the perfect opportunity to revisit this classic in a new light. It's not a full-fledged remake, but the bevy of visual and gameplay improvements make this experience easily digestible for fans accustomed to modern AAA releases. And of course, there's the riveting story that will keep you thinking about it long after the credits roll. Outer Wilds. Mobius Digital's Outer Wilds is an excellent time-looping adventure that constantly plays on the player's curiosity to explore and learn new things about a foreign world. Each planet in Outer Wilds is markedly different from the last, not just in terms of visuals, but also traversal challenges, and it's a ton of fun to explore these carefully crafted spaces and unearth new information about the Nomai tribe, and eventually break the time loop. While it might not be as action-heavy as other titles on this list, it's definitely something that you should try out. And that brings us to the end of the video. A quick request: we upload new videos every single day, and if you like what we're doing, please consider subscribing. It really helps us out. Also, don't forget to enable all notifications by clicking the bell icon so that you can receive daily video updates. Thanks for watching.